Well, hello there, and welcome to the Second Life Book Club. My name is Draxtor Dupre. As every Wednesday, we shall have an exciting discussion around books. Yes, people do read, some do. Today is no exception. I will introduce the panel in just a moment after a few house cleaning notes. You have noticed a new time. We're now starting at 12 p.m. Pacific or Second Life time. And we are, of course, streaming to Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, maybe Instagram. I don't know. Linden Lab will let you know. So I welcome all of our disembodied audiences on these 2D platforms. I will incorporate the comments from there in the discussion as well. And of course, our in-world audience. Welcome, in-world audience. So many new faces. It's absolutely fantastic to see so many people that apparently are interested in the written word. Now, Book Club Island is always open. You will find, you may find a well-meaning newbie stumbling around, or a seasoned second lifer. So please help each other out. Join the group. Suggest a show idea by sending me an email or an IM. Email is slbookclub@draxtor.com. Quick thank you list. I hear I hear somebody shuffling around papers. That must be either an author or a publisher on my in my ear. That's what they do. They work with paper, folks. Um, so a quick thank you list before we go to the panel, because our panel, as you can see here, is not very human, but still very, very cuddly. Now, the small group that puts the show together includes Strawberry Linden, who is in charge of camera and streaming and onboarding. Brett Linden helps out with security and marketing. Patch Linden, the whole governance team, including the molds. They built this venue. Marianne McCann customized the venue, builds props, interactive stuff. Kralos customizes the avatars, and Silas Merlin, of course, he makes special swag, really cool stuff. Also in the swag department, AJ McDowell made new coffee mugs. You see the coffee mugs on the table. If you click the coffee mug, the coffee mug on the table is also a vendor. So click on it and you get a bunch. Now today's panelists here on stage with me. Let me introduce them. It's like I said, almost completely non-humanoid. So there's Shiromi Pinto. She appears as a red parrot. Next to her is Annabel Banks, who is a
Hi.
cat. Welcome, you guys.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, parrot. Hello, cat.
Hello.
Wonderful to have you. On the other side of me is a pirate by the name of Kit Caless and a bear by the name of Gary Budden. They're both authors, also editors, and also, I guess, running the business side of things. Hello, guys.
Hello.
Hi, this is just a. I don't know what I'm saying. Hi. I wasn't prepared for that.
You weren't prepared for addressing a crowd in your embodiment?
Partly because I seem to have ruined what I can see, and I can't even see the crowd. I can only see the side of Shiromi's face. So I don't know what's going on.
It's a wonderful face, Shiromi. Why don't you take some, spread your wings and fly? No, don't fly away. But
No,
you
I
could,
won't.
give us a little show here for poor Gary. Gary, you can always reset the camera by hitting the escape button,
Yeah.
and then pressing the Alt Option key, and then you can cam around with Alt Option pressed. Now, these folks here on stage, and you can see in the back our image, are from a independent publishing outfit called Influx Press out of the UK. And here also around the stage, you see some of their titles floating around. So I put a lot of books up here. So they have titles such as Built on Sand, Beirut Moon, Jolt's Body Parts, Plastic Emotion, Famished, and Exercises in Control. And here's a book that is called I'm Not Sidney Portier, which actually just arrived in the mail. Now, I'm a newly minted super fan and a subscriber. Influx has a subscription model. You can subscribe to 3, 6, or 9 books. They get shipped to you per year. And it's absolutely amazing. So we'll ask the folks here on stage how this thing works, because I understand that Kit and Gary, together with Sanya Semakula, are the only people who are running this operation, including shipping and whatnot. So I'm absolutely in awe of how this works. I want to find out. Now, let's find out first, how does everyone feel in their avatar in this strange world? Would you rather have done this on Zoom? Anybody chime in while Shiromi is flying around? How do you guys feel?
This is great. I'm sick of Zoom calls. Been 3 months of Zoom calls. I'm done with Zoom.
Is this Gary speaking?
This is Gary speaking, yeah.
Unfortunately, your bear is so awesome, but this mouth is not moving, so I gotta look at the other monitor. Kit, how do you feel? What is your embodiment all about?
Well, my family are from Cornwall, which is like the kind of where the original pirates come from in England. And I thought I would honor my ancestors by requesting to be a pirate.
You are really a pirate.
Yeah, so I just also wanted to add, I like Second Life because at the moment I'm looking around my flat and it's just not very tidy, and it's much nicer to be in a space that's a bit tidy. Yes, Peter Coach. Yes, yeah, Penzance is actually where my family are from, so I am genuinely a Penzance pirate.
Yeah,
and also
Peter.
Just to say something about Gary's mouth. When Gary talks in real life, his mouth doesn't move either, so it's quite
It's very accurate. See, very stoic like that.
And as any hobby comedian, I'm going to repeat the joke that I said off the air earlier. Is your body size is that directly related to the power structure within Influx Press? Who does what in Influx Press?
I'm going to say yes, definitely.
It's always the smaller people you need to watch out for. I think that's what we need to ask for. I'm just going to quickly respond to a comment, if you don't mind. Someone asked me if there's any pirates in my family. And yes, my great-grandfather was a smuggler, but he was also a priest at the same time to cover up the fact that he was smuggling. And he has a whole life story history, and it's all based around the fact that he was running a church, but also illegal tobacco smuggling in the early 1900s. So
That's literally like the story of Dr. Sin from Romney Marsh from those novels, isn't it? Very similar.
I've not read that, so please don't pretend that I've read that and made it my family story. Thanks.
Have you written about this, Kit? Are you writing about it?
No. No, I probably won't. I don't know. We'll see. I tend to write non-fiction about other people rather than my family. So, yes, my family has some dark histories, but they'll come out at some point once everyone's dead and I'm still alive.
Mine too. My grandfather was original Antifa. Now I might not even get back to the United States when the lockdown is over. But Shiromi came back here. She was flying around. Shiromi, take your time. Coming back on the sofa. Annabel, you're no stranger to Second Life. Why are you a cat, real quick?
I'm a cat just because I have a black and white cat, and through lockdown, she's the person I'm spending most of my time with. And when I was in Second Life before, when I was playing around with it a couple of years back, I was always a person, and I always admired. I never really explored the fact that you can really play around with your embodiment, and I just wanted to try something new. And when you said you could source me a cat, it was just, I was thrilled. And I am thrilled. I love my avatar, except for the problem when she purrs out of turn. So
she did purr
if she does that.
We were at a big meeting, guys, with Annabel, and she was purring incessantly. Those were museum administrators. It was a big meeting with head honchos of museums from all over the world. Yeah. They will never come back to Second Life. But let's stick with the topic at hand. And I actually want to briefly acknowledge. And Shiromi, you can also hover or you can stay where you are. It's very cute that Shiromi is running around here in the back. It's just wonderful. Shiromi is by the lamp. Maybe she is cold. How is everyone dealing with the current situation in the so-called real world, aka the physical realm? I mean, I talked with Shiromi before, and we shared a sentiment that's, it may feel that our topic today of literary fiction feels maybe almost irrelevant when we look at the upheaval that is happening primarily in the U.S., but not exclusively, unfortunately. How do you guys feel about that? Being in the business of, I mean, Kit, you mentioned nonfiction, but essentially you're in the business of selling lies, you know, and when we're in a situation like it is today, sometimes folks express the sentiment that this is escapism and we can't, you know, engage with that escapism. How would you respond to that?
Are you asking me directly?
Anybody? I'll ask
No.
anybody.
I'll
I
say
know
it first, but I don't want to dominate the conversation. But I think with moments like these that are sort of strong sparks or peaks in a sort of graph of progress or whatever, I think fiction provides a broader timeline in which to understand the current situations we're in, because life often repeats itself and moments repeat themselves, and fiction gives us a way of seeing them from all directions and all angles, rather than being totally stuck in the moment, and allows us to strategize and look outside of the exact present to be able to then work out what to do with what's happening in a long-term way. That's my opinion. I don't know what other people think.
I'd just jump in. I mean, I'd always refute the idea that fiction is lies for a start. I think there's been numerous studies that show that readers of fiction tend to have more developed senses of empathy, which is obviously, I think, something that is the world probably needs a lot of right now. And I don't know, I don't like this idea of saying if you're working on fiction right now, it's somehow a waste of time because there's this pressing issue. You can do both. And also, in what kind of ideal society do we want? The one I would want would have a thriving cultural aspect to it, of course, which literature will be a huge part.
Right. I couldn't agree more, and let me just be clear that the sentiment that I expressed is something that I push back against sometimes, and I have to push back against, and I find it completely ridiculous to dismiss fiction of any kind, because just like Kit and Gary, you expressed, the context, the longer timeline is absolutely important, especially today where everything is there to distract us. By keeping us in a constant loop of repetitive things where we are against a wall of fear and a constant sort of fight or flight stimulus, if you will.
Yeah, and I genuinely believe that it's not the only thing you should be reading, but fiction, if you read fiction from a wide variety of authors across time periods and across cultures, it does help you understand other people a lot better. And if it should go in tandem with reading non-fiction, watching documentaries, and living real life at the same time.
Right. Shiromi, are you back? Can you hear us? Little cute pirate here. Parrot.
Yes, I can hear you. I'm just stuck behind this lamp because I think I'm having quite a lot of technical difficulties.
You're doing just fine, Shiromi. You're doing just fine. You can hover in the air if you want, and come up a little bit and hover over us, like look from a bird eye's view, almost literally speaking. Now, the topic for today is, and I put this title together, obviously tongue in cheek and a little provocative. Here goes Shiromi. Wonderful. Why does literary fiction thrive in a world where nobody reads? So this is the title of today's discussion. Now, I put it to the panel, and as a general rule, folks, just jump in and talk over each other. Unfortunately, we don't have. I would like to implement a little sort of tomato that we can throw at each other's avatar to signal that we want to speak, because we don't have enough signifiers. Maybe Shiromi can land on the person's head who is speaking. But so anybody jump in here. Do you guys feel that literary fiction is in fact thriving? Do you guys? I mean, obviously, your operation is operating. I'm not assuming that your authors are getting rich. You're not in this business to get rich, but it's running, or is it?
I would say, this is Gary speaking. I would say that in the United Kingdom, at least, I think more books are published per week now than like ever before. It's a ridiculous number of titles. So I would sort of refute the idea that nobody reads. There are huge dedicated kind of reading communities all over the world. I like that rustling noise there. That's good. It depends what we mean by depends what we mean by thriving. I think from our perspective, currently in the UK, there's quite a thriving independent publishing scene, for want of a better word. I think that would be fair to say. And why that is, I would potentially, I think it's because it's providing a kind of alternative and slightly different kinds of literature that maybe larger publishers were not offering.
I'd like to ask Shiromi a question, actually, related to this. So Shiromi had her first book came out in 2006, and I suppose I'd like to ask her what she sees as different now. So what's that 14 years later? What the ecosystem or the culture around books is now compared to then?
Oh my goodness, I think the big difference is that the marketing machinery is quite. It's actually pulls apart. When my first novel came out, we didn't have quite so much. We didn't really have like social media. You couldn't do the kind of marketing that you do now on Twitter, and obviously, like it wasn't there entirely. But it's just now it's an extremely influential and powerful channel that you can use, and I think also the expectations based on authors at that time were slightly different. Like now you're kind of, not that you guys expected this, but I think in general publishers will expect you to have a quite a large following on social media, and they expect you to do a lot of your own promotion. And I suppose that's still quite true also when published by an independent publisher as well, because budgets are not as a large publisher. I would say that's really the big difference. My first novel, when it came out, it had a very sort of traditional kind of promotion, and there were no online experiences. I mean, certainly there was never any request for me to appear on Second Life, for instance.
Let me jump in here real quick, because Shiromi's a little bit breaking up for me. Maybe that's only me, but I understood what you were saying, that the advent of social media, I guess I hear you say that it's a blessing and a curse in the sense that you have more possibilities to promote, but then publishers kind of demand that you kind of do that as opposed to them having done it before. Is that the case?
I don't think we demand people do stuff, but I think there's an audience.
You guys don't. You're a pirate. You're just there with your bottle of rum or whatever, and say you're.
This is Gary speaking. I'd say I think readers have more of a sense that there needs to be a public author. The author needs to be more accessible to them, the author, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think Stella in the audience also says, she says, we have slightly addressed this before. Is it more, I guess that's her question, is it more significant to have a social media following to get published today? That's what I heard you say too, that when publishers look at you, they go like, this person already has a substantial following, so I'm going to take that person in vis-a-vis somebody else.
I mean, I don't think it would be the deciding factor unless you had two completely equally amazing books about the same sort of topic, and then you might go, oh, this author's got a great social media presence, and then I think it would be beneficial. It's never going to hurt. I don't think. I mean, we do publish authors who have very limited social media presence, so it's not the only thing I would look for. I think right. Kit would agree with me.
No, well, I mean, the work has to be good. Yeah. You can't have just someone who's shit hot on social media but can't write more than a page. I think with what Shiromi was saying is, when we talk about traditional publicity and marketing, we talk about relying on traditional print media, which in 2006 was still quite a big element to sort of media in general, even though things were moving online and like I think print media was still particularly newspapers and where people might read book reviews and that sort of stuff. That was really important. Whereas now there's much more a focus on engaging with the audience directly, which can be done through Twitter and other social media and stuff like that. But also we do loads and loads of events. Well, I mean, obviously this is one of them, but like there's also in real life events, COVID, accepting, where people will just turn up and listen and talk, and we'll run events in pubs, but we'll also run them in bookshops or arts venues, and I think there's more of a willingness for the barrier between the author and the audience to be broken down. I think maybe Annabel could talk about her launch she had at a bookshop where literally she couldn't sit down at her own book launch. So I don't know if you want to talk about that, Annabel.
No, that's fantastic. Annabel just came back. She was running around outside getting some mice. Okay, that's a lame remark. I just also want to clarify that what you guys said earlier about more books being sold, that was echoed by an author I had on, Amber Lee Dodge. She writes a wonderful young adult book called We Are Giants and Others. But I'm also specifically interested about literary fiction, not genre fiction. I mean, that there's a distinction. So I'm just generally curious, coming myself from a sort of a literary snobbish background that I rebelled against I tell the story every time by reading Conan and other sort of pulpy fantasy stuff, and then now I'm back with Thomas Mann and Böll and contemporary literary. So we'll pick this up later. But Annabel, do you want to tell us about your book launch where you couldn't even get back in?
My cumulative memories of that evening are probably about 10 minutes. I found the whole thing very overwhelming. It was very busy. It was people I didn't know. It was very exciting. People were really interested in the book, and until I had no idea that.
One second, Annabel. Sorry to interrupt you. You have to press the speak button in Second Life. The local audience can't hear you. Just press the speak button on the bottom.
My laptop booted me, so I had to play around with the settings again. Apologies. I'll start again. So
no worries. And Shiromi, please do fly. Don't worry about getting back on that couch. It's much nicer when you fly around. I love it.
Okay. My launch was amazing. It was in a fantastic independent bookshop in central London, and as I said, I don't have a lot of memories from that evening because it all went by so quickly. One of my friends joked it was a bit like being at a wedding where everybody wants to speak to you, but you don't have a lot of time. I felt like I didn't get to really say hello to anybody. Lots of people came. It was an amazing event. I had a lovely Q&A and introduction from Ellie Williams, who has written a wonderful book of short stories called A Trib. And it was just really special, and I was really grateful to everybody involved. It was a very strange feeling to be asked to sign the books.
Mm-hmm. You felt like a rock star.
I felt like a proper writer. I've been plugging away for 10 years writing these stories, longer, but getting published for sort of 10 years on and off, writing poetry as well, and all the other things that I do, and was always kind of satisfied with being one of the outliers, just being somebody who publishes in the small literary journals, very not really interested in serving genre or serving anything other than the things that worry me or interest me, or playing with form, being quite selfish, I suppose, in some ways, in the decision.
Oh, I mean, I would call that fiercely independent. I mean, you wanted to be a certain way. I mean, I love your book. I love your stories. I think that they're amazing, and the stamina that it takes to go this path. Maybe while on the path, there may be opportunities to veer left or right and just go more formulaic, let's say. I mean, let's not knock genre,
and also, but the only reason you've read my stories, really, Drax, is because Influx Press are there. That there's an independent.
Correct.
Because a traditional publishing house wouldn't touch me with a 10-foot stick. But these guys are interested in work that might not fit a particular mold. They're interested in publishing voices that are on the outside or might have something different to say, or a bit experimental, not serving the mainstream, and that's so necessary and so valuable. They're great.
How do you guys
Subscribe.
find each other? Yeah, exactly. Subscribe. So I'm going to put this in here again. It's influxpress.com. And how do you guys find each other? I want to know about that. And then I also want to hear some readings. If you're just tuning in, this is the Second Life Book Club. On stage with me is Shiromi Pinto, Annabel Banks, Kit Caless, and Gary Budden. Also, you can see in the back their names and their sort of real life personas juxtaposed with their essence. Kit likes to stand up and sit down. He's a little bit antsy. That's totally fine. Shiromi as well. But how do you guys find authors? And in our pre-conversation, you mentioned you go locally around London, and I'm always worried when these sort of centers of culture, they can be kind of a bubble and also cut out people from places where they live, especially in America where it's much bigger. They may be underserved. So how do you find your authors?
I mean, we don't just wander the streets of London and find people that way, but
we're sitting in the pub and then somebody says, "I wrote something."
I mean, Annabel is an example of, we were open for what we call open submissions. These means submissions that are sent to us without the author having a literary agent, which actually Shiromi's book came to us that way as well. So we would have, our unedited manuscripts, which we would call the slush pile, to read through, and we would pick out work we like from that, and that's how we found those two books. Other times we might be publishing an author we've worked with for a couple of books. Occasionally we've asked authors if they have a book they'd like to publish with us. Am I missing anything out, Kit?
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. No, I don't think so. The one thing I'd like to say just quickly, the relationship between Annabel and Shiromi is that they were both picked out by Sanya, who isn't here tonight.
Yeah, we need to get Sanya here.
But she's a really integral part of this, where we'll have things being sent in, and she's one of our first readers. And she picked out Shiromi's novel and also Annabel's book and a couple of others. So that's one way of doing it. The other, there are some sort of legendary stories of us being in the top of a pub.
See, I knew it, kid. I knew it.
Like listening to someone read a story and then us going up to them afterwards and asking them if they've written a book, and they say they haven't written a book, and we say, "Would you like to write a book?" And they say yes, and then
which basically happened one time, didn't it?
Yeah, I know, but that's still the legend. That happened one time, and that ended up being quite a successful project. I think also we have, we just get introduced to people, so it might be that someone just says, "I've got a friend who's writing this thing," or "I've got a friend who's interested in this," and that makes it sound like a sort of club, but it isn't. It's just that it becomes a recommendation from someone that you maybe trust the taste of, or something like that. And other ways we can do stuff. Obviously, we get things through agents as well. That's quite a standard way of doing things in publishing. But I think so. We had a book about music, a genre of music called grime, which is sort of black music art form in Britain. And the guy who wrote that, Jeffrey Boachi, he'd been writing blogs about it for a while, and it turned out that I liked his blogs, but then also I happened to know someone who knew him, so we did it that way. But I happened to have read his blogs before I found out who his mates were, if that makes sense. So it wasn't necessarily like someone just phoned me up and said, "Give my friend a book deal." But I think generally, I don't know, Gary, if you think this is true, but I think we might be 50-50 on agented books and writers without agents. What do you think?
Yeah, it's about that mix, I think. I mean, just to sort of quickly address that sort of question of cultural centres, London being obviously a very big one. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily good to compare the UK with the US. The UK literary scene is, I'd say, fairly small. Unfortunately, most of it is centred in London, but we are publishing authors from all over the world now and all across the UK. I think initially when we started, necessarily our own networks were within London and Southeast England, but that's expanding all the time. And that's something we're looking to expand, so it doesn't become a clique, which is something I would hate to happen.
So you're that's good to hear. I just want to mention that Anna Vaught, one of your authors, is actually watching this on Periscope right now, and she said she just discovered her own book, which is called Vamished by Anna Vaught, and it's right here on the table. And I deeply apologize that I put the brand new Second Life Book Club coffee cup on it, which is free, but the Vamished book is not free, but it's well worth your euros, dollars, or pounds. Influxpress.com. Thank you.
Published in September, that one.
Now, I would like to move to some readings, and Shiromi and people in world can see I just brought in a little contraption here, a music stand with your excellent book Plastic Emotions on it, a little tree, and Shiromi, if you hover with your mouse over the tree branch, you will have a sit animation, and you can sit on this tree. There you go, as we had practiced.
Yes, I managed.
Wow! So this is wonderful. So Plastic Emotions is Shiromi's second book, and I don't know if you want to give us a quick overview what it's about. I mean, I would say that it's I would describe it as it's a fictional love story set against real history after the Second World War, between a love story between Minette de Silva, who is, I guess, an almost forgotten pioneering architect from Sri Lanka, and a guy by the name of Le Corbusier, so a Swiss-French architect of modernism. And I'm actually going to res some pictures in the back, because if people don't recognize the name Le Corbusier, if they see pictures of his builds, they will recognize him. I was actually not aware that he built apartment complexes in Berlin as well as in Marseille. Huge apartment complexes called Unité de Habitation. Oh God, my French is terrible. Shiromi, rescue me. What is your book about?
So it's called Plastic Emotions, as everyone can see. And it is really inspired by the life and work of a Sri Lankan architect. Her name was Minette de Silva. And Sri Lanka's first modernist architect. And she also had a friendship, some say relationship, I imagine quite an intimate relationship with Le Corbusier. And it's actually...
Oh, I think Shiromi is breaking up a little bit here.
Can you hear me? Shall I speak slower?
I think Shiromi is breaking up, so let me fill this in here. In the background, you will see a picture of Minette de Silva at the World Congress. I forgot when that was. This is Pablo Picasso, obviously, on the left. The other two fellas, I don't know. And Minette de Silva was born in 1918. She passed away in 1998. She built important buildings and structures in all over Sri Lanka. But like I said, she was almost forgotten. Now, Le Corbusier, of course, is still revered. And in the book, they have an intimate relationship, but they also have a very unequal relationship. As you may imagine, that Le Corbusier is sort of a dominant figure, very, very assured of himself professionally and as a man. And Minette, who is also, I think Shiromi said this in a previous interview, is considered a feminist, is nonetheless, in my reading, interestingly enough, accepting of some questionable behavior on Le Corbusier's side. I mean, Le Corbusier had all sorts of affairs. He didn't answer her calls, well, not calls, but letters. And the story unfolds against the backdrop of enormous also political upheaval in Sri Lanka, Ceylon, as it used to be called, and gained independence from British rule in 1948, with rioting, a multi-ethnic society, and all that kind of stuff. And in the foreground are these two architects. I know nothing about architecture, and I loved this book. And I was sitting there with Wikipedia nonstop trying to look up the real figures. It's an absolute masterpiece. Shiromi, do we have you back?
Can you hear me? Am I clear?
Let's check on the voice.
Hello?
Oh, the
Okay.
people can hear the parrot in Second Life. I can't hear the parrot on Discord though.
Oh gosh.
Here, now I hear you. I hear you on Discord, Shiromi. You're good?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I will carry on then. So Drax just gave a really long and detailed introduction. So I'm going to dive into this.
Was it a good introduction, Shiromi?
It
Do
was
I pass?
absolutely, you passed. It was excellent.
Thank you, teacher.
And I will just jump in, and hopefully people can follow me in this reading. So I'm reading from a section about a third of the way through the novel. It's December 1951, and quite unusually, usually I read Minette's parts first, but this time I'm going to start with Le Corbusier, and I apologize, there will be some French in this as well. So
We should say, Shiromi, that because it's partially in letters, right? So partially, I mean,
exactly.
there are different perspectives in the book, and then there's some sections where it's the letter exchange. Is I guess what you're referring to. You're reading a part of the letter exchange, yeah.
Exactly. So actually, this so the novel is constructed in roughly 3 parts. One part is the correspondence, then we have a mix of correspondence and third-person narration. It goes back to correspondence. Actually, in the big chunk that's in the middle, which is a mix of correspondence and third-person narration. And so what you will hear is a mix of a bit of letters and then a bit of narration. So
Fingers crossed that Shiromi's voice is not breaking up.
I know. I hope everyone can hear me. Just shout if you can't. So, oh my God.
The producer in my ear, please tell me if you can hear Shiromi and folks in world.
Hello, can you hear me?
Ah.
Oh, great. Thank you, Beth.
I think we don't hear her on the Facebook stream.
Floyd, I stand with George Floyd. But what I don't do is that black box thing that I don't want to know about. That black box, that was an idiot thing. I'm not, bruv, you've got a forgotten Trayvon Martin. How quick you jump onto George Floyd. So yeah, mate. Yep.
There's a voice coming in, and I don't hear Shiromi. Okay. Sorry, we have to move to plan B. Shiromi, we can't hear you on Discord, which is the main audience, and not the main audience. The most important audience are the special people in Second Life, but the larger audience and the video feed is getting the voice from Discord. So I apologize. Shiromi, this is such a wonderful book. I have a workaround. People go to influxpress.com right now. I told you this was an infomercial, and get a subscription and get this book. Okay. I would like to move to, in the interest of time, we have to move to Annabel. We don't have to. I want to. Annabel, can you hear us?
Hello, I can. Yes.
Well, you can't rely on a parrot. You can rely on a cat. No, Shiromi. So this book, Plastic Emotions, just to wrap it up, is a wonderful a book where this love story, like I said, is set against this turmoil. Before we move to Annabel, and get ready to read, Annabel.
Okay.
Kit and Gary, what in a nutshell, what was it that grabbed you guys, or more specifically Sanya, about this book? Why did you feel you needed to publish this?
I think I can probably take that one. I worked on it with Shiromi. I think there's a combination of things really, but uncovering or not uncovering, but basically Minette da Silva as a character, historical figure, is fascinating, and I'd never heard of her as this, one of the first one of the first women in the world to set up her own architectural practice, but also the first Asian woman to qualify from the Royal Institute of British Architects. And, you know, anybody who's interested in architecture, we've published books on architecture previously,
Right.
and it's one of my interests. But, you know, everyone knows, not everyone, but like people who know a lot about architecture, know about Le Corbusier, know about Frank Lloyd Wright, know about Christopher Wren and all these big figures, and Geoffrey Bower, and you know, suddenly this story comes out about this woman who's been struggling to become an architect, and also had some really revolutionary ideas about what modernism could be like in a tropical space, you know, in the sort of what you might term now the global south. And so first of all, it's the content and what Shiromi's addressing and bringing this historical woman back to our sort of consciousness, but also Shiromi's writing itself is incredibly lyrical and very accomplished, and sweeps you up and sort of takes you away into this world that no longer really exists. You know, this is a sort of post-war, pre-Civil War Sri Lanka of which I will never experience, and most people will never have experienced. And the way she writes it is glorious, and you can't help but just be taken in and transported. And I think that's really important to accompany the concepts and the history she's getting across, is to make you feel like you're in the place she's talking about.
Right. And I mean, obviously, I mean, it comes across in the conversation that you guys also know your audience, which I am, you know, the perfect audience, I think, for you guys, because I like to be surprised by books with stuff that I have no idea who this is or who this historical figure was. And that's what attracts me and draws me in. But for you guys, again, this is, I mean, isn't this what is the risk factor here? When, I mean, how do you talk to Shiromi about this? Let's say, you know, you have to sell X amount of books, or we have to drop you. I mean, that goes back to the earlier part of the conversation about managing expectations, managing your own expectations, making tough calculations. How many do you have to sell to break even, and all this kind of stuff?
This is Gary speaking. It all depends kind of what kind of agreement you're dealing with. If it's like a one book contract, then there would be no question of us dropping an author. Do you see what I mean? It would just, we would work on that one project with them, and then they might want to send us more stuff in the future, or they might not. So if it's, I don't think we've ever been in the position where we've said this book has to do well, otherwise we're dropping you. I know I wouldn't want to be in that position. In terms of risk, I mean, it's the risk for anyone.
But I mean, there's also an economic reality. I mean, if you print X amount of books and they don't sell.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah, of course. I mean, that is obviously the risk of anyone running a business the way we do, is that we have to sell X number of books, otherwise we can't make enough money and we stop existing. That's always the risk of what we do. So do you mean, like, does that inform our choices of what we publish?
I mean, this is a whole conversation that could last several hours. Yes and no. I mean, you know, obviously the cool thing about a small independent press is that you don't have to succumb to the pressures of other publishers. You know, I'm in the music business, so it's the same calculation.
Yeah.
Which is, it's freedom versus having to you know, be very, very specific in your formulaic design to please the masses in order to justify the investment.
I like to I think for what we do, because we've spent the best part of a decade, 8 years now, kind of building up Influx, I think, and this is true of a lot of independent publishers, we've got enough of a kind of core readership that they'll sort of trust us with whatever we put out. So we will have a kind of core readership for whatever book we put out, and that will be enough for us to sort of justify publishing that book.
See, that makes total sense to me. So this is, again, let's remind folks that you have this subscription model where, and I like this too, almost, I mean, it's not the same thing, but we subscribe to community supported agriculture as we had done in California. We're doing it here in Germany as well, where you basically pay a subscription and you rely on the farmer to give you the stuff that works with the soil and with the seasons. And that's kind of what I do with you guys, although I can pick those books. But I support your operation by committing to getting those books via the subscription. Although I don't know what the offering is going to be, right?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about this is that this is a really good way of us building an audience in having that idea that I think people appreciate that they don't know what's coming.
Mm-hmm.
And then they trust us in terms of what we're choosing to publish, which is very different to. There was a question earlier in the chat box about does self-publishing threaten our existence, or is
Stella was asking, right, because she was saying everybody is published either way, either through a traditional publisher, big, small, or self-published.
Right, and I think the difference here with us is like it's almost like we're curating a list for people to, it's very hard as a reader to know what to buy, right? To know what's going to be good, what's going to be interesting, what's going to be different. You're not quite sure what you're after. Mm-hmm. And I think as publishers, we're basically saying, look, we're going to do 10 books a year. Every single one of these books we love, we think is brilliant. They're going to be different, but just trust us and you'll get some really good stuff. So that's why we have you can get 3 books a year, or you can get 6 books a year, or 9 books a year. We give options. It's not like you have to buy all of them or whatever. Mm-hmm. And just another point to make about sort of calculating risk and stuff like that. With Shiromi's book, with Plastic Emotions, I kind of had a feeling that it would have an international appeal as well, because it's historical. It's about one of the characters is a major French architect and whatever. And so we end up also selling the rights to that book to Penguin in India. So they published it in India. And we recently sold a translation to France. So there'll be a French version as well. And that helps generate income for both the author and us. So, sometimes you can get a feeling for a book and you can be like, I think this is actually going to have a broader appeal outside of the UK. And we're going to be able to sell it to other publishers who will then publish it in other countries. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And sorry, just to jump in, Gary here again. And we have to kind of trust our own judgment a little bit. And Kit mentioned we have Sanya, who's a great kind of first reader. So we all have varying tastes. If we all agree on a book that we like, we kind of can trust our own judgment, especially as we've had a few successes, prize wins, prize nominations, that sort of stuff. So we kind of built ourselves to a point where collectively we can trust our collective judgment. I think Kit and I say this a lot as well about independent publisher is we look to our sort of fandom in music. It's similar to independent labels we both liked in the 90s from different genres. You'd go to that label and buy whatever they were putting out because it was kind of a stamp of quality or a certain type of product they were putting out there.
And that's totally the vibe that, I mean, when I discovered you guys, I mean, seriously, that's exactly how I feel about this. I'm just super thrilled. And now, so let's move because we are 10 minutes to the top of the hour. We will have another 30 minutes for hanging out with Q&A in world only. We cut the stream around the top of the hour, so Facebook and Twitter people, I'm sorry. You can try to hop in world. We have 2 or 3 seats left. By the way, somebody commented who leaves their books on the floor like this, like here in SL, and then Liv said a cat and a parrot. Of course. Now, I see the cat in front of, and Shiromi is back with voice. Shiromi, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect, Shiromi. Awesome.
Awesome.
We're going to do a quick reading maybe when we get to it. So Annabel is first, though, because the cat is right in front of her book here.
Great. I'm ready to go. I'm quite anxious to because my laptop has already crashed once because it's overheating, so and booted me out. So
Well, you
I'm
fell
ready to
asleep in
go.
front of your
Oh,
you
no, I
fell
fell
asleep in
asleep.
front of your own book, and here comes
That's
the
because I know
author.
it so well.
Here comes the author where traditional publishers, did you say, won't touch you with a 10-foot pole? Was that your words, or is that mine?
Yeah, I firmly believe that. Yeah, I think I was very, very lucky, very fortunate to have seen the open call, and just send in the collection. Well, I sent in a sample of my stories. The call wasn't for a full manuscript; it was just, and I sent in a few, and a very exciting email back from Sanya saying, "Come and see the rest," and it was just brilliant. But so the story I want to read is the first story in the collection.
That's what I thought.
It was published, I think, 2016, in a very nice literary journal, online journal called Matchbook, lowercase m. Go and look at them. They publish something every month. What they select is always. I'm not just saying this because they selected me. I was a fan of the journal beforehand, and they were kind enough to nominate my story for the Pushcart that year, and it was for the Derringer Award as well, and it was a semi-finalist of the Best Short Fictions, which is a US thing. So it did quite well. I was very pleased with it. But it's.
Let me say, Annabel, sorry to interrupt. We'll have you read. I don't care about your awards. What I care about is that this book is so awesomely strange that I have the time, don't know what's going on, and that's exactly why I would buy 3 more copies, and maybe I will, and send it to friends.
That's very kind.
The world building is amazing. It leaves so much open. I mean, these worlds are mysterious, weird. I just want to throw this out there. There's a weird guy who cuts up a mouse to kind of control the spoiler. I mean, come on, you got to tease a little bit. I know what people want.
So that's the way that I work. So you're my ideal reader. You're somebody who doesn't need to know that the story that I'm writing will.
No, I would find it super boring. Exactly.
And so maybe I'll read the example. I'll read Payment to the Universe. It's quite short. I'm aware we've only got 8 minutes. And we'll just give a little sample to see if it's the kind of thing, if it clicks with anybody and you think, oh, okay, then,
if the room is empty after this, we know.
Then we know we've done it wrong. Okay, so Payment to the Universe. Margaret is the boss. So you suppose it's okay that she leaves early. Actually, you're glad. By 5 to 6, the offices are empty, quiet, aired. The cupboard of cleaning supplies is just large enough for the chair to fit between the boxes of bleach and stinky rags, so you can sit and look at the list of jobs for the night. Margaret is always careful to mark up the set of instructions on the dry white board. They are always the same, so you don't know why she bothers. Sometimes it's written in red, sometimes in blue, but closes with the same smiley face, whose smile is more pointed than a curve. It means business. You drop your tabard over your head, screw in your earbuds, blue, electric blue in your ears, and drag the vacuum cleaner from its corner. Atrium first, then the halls, sucking the day's skin cells from the nylon pile. The first room is meant for visitors. Photographs of rural landscapes, oil wells, some school prize giving where everyone is in animal masks have been blown up, poster size, and bolted to the wall. You rub a cloth over the fields and faces. Turn out the light when you leave. The second room is more of a kitchen, although there are no appliances. Thai food in plastic bottles, piles of fruit, apples and bananas arranged in balanced displays. On the far wall, rows of toothbrush holders have been fixed to cheap plastic shelving. You counted them once when you were either bored or curious. 30 across, 5 rows down. 150 brushes and never enough toothpaste. In the evening's hush, you can take a moment here. You bring out your own brush from your pocket of your tabard and have a cheeky scrub, giving some minty slip fit to the bin you then tie up and lug downstairs. Skip. Up some stairs, down some stairs. Blue in your ears, and you're not allowed inside this room at all, but that is why you've come here. An accident of opportunity gave you pass, and you're not about to give it up with any fake attempt at decency, of notions of doing the right thing, so carefully primed in your childhood. There is a water jug On the safe with 3 glasses, but you know better than to touch it. There's a pile of papers to shuffle, straighten, glance through. There's a fleshy lump in the corner, quivering, with a blag on its head. It's this last that you've come to stare at. You cough loudly, so it knows that you are here, so it will call out in that language you don't understand. Doesn't matter what the words mean. You know it wants to be touched, to be able to see. The twitching is less than yesterday, even less than the day before, but perhaps that's acceptance rather than anything more final. You think about touching it, as always. Consider uncovering its eyes, letting it take an unrestricted breath to moisten its lips with water. Daydreaming these actions always makes you feel kinder. It's a payment to the universe. So perhaps the cigarette you'll have on your way home won't be the one to give you cancer. Perhaps the earlier bus has been delayed just enough that you can catch it and avoid waiting in the dark, singing Pale Blinds Drawn All Day. You close the door and make it back to the cupboard. Your mouth is still too minty for smoking, so you'll grab a coffee from the machine by the second floor toilets. The price has gone up, but you're not about to complain. You like this job. It fits with the hours you keep.
And that's Annabel Banks reading from Exercises in Control, Payment to the Universe. Thank you, Annabel.
Thank you.
It is creepy. So much creepy stuff in there, and it's wonderful. And actually, you know, because I read this back to back with Shiromi's book, and what is fascinating about this, and this also to the whole Influx Press team, kudos that you guys are pushing out stuff where, you know, here's a 300, 400 page book, and there is a fairly thin volume with just 14 short stories, and it shows you what you can do with the written word, just like with music. Sometimes a piece is just a, I don't know, guitar solo by B.B. King versus a symphony by Shostakovich. One is huge, big, and the other one is small and precise, and they both touch you in different ways. Absolutely amazing. Shiromi, I'm sorry we're running out of time, but we will stick around. I need to wrap up the show. Any last words on the future of your operation now with COVID-19, or a similar situation? Maybe, you know, it's not inconceivable that we will be impacted by this for some time to come. How does that change the operation? Take it where you will.
Operation? What do you mean? The operation? In my writing?
Oh, Shiromi, yes, anybody. Yeah, no, this was just throwing
means?
into the room.
I see. Okay.
I what I meant by operation was writing, reading, and promoting books in this day and age. How does it impact it? How does it move forward? We talked, Shiromi, and we talk about here on the panel often about the anxiety that the situation creates. And, you know, theoretically, people go like, yeah, you know, you have more time as a sort of an artist who needs solitude. This might be a good situation, but when you have kids and you have to do homeschooling and you're constantly in an anxiety frame of mind about the state of the world, that's not very conducive to being creative either.
I would say we still need readers. Everybody I know the world is changing, but writers write to be read, and we're grateful for people engaging with our work and all the platforms that you can.
Yeah.
And I just want to jump in, Gary speaking, about just how we continue as an operation. Being a small independent press has allowed us to react quite quickly. So I hope we can get back to doing live events, but it's been great fun doing stuff like this. And we've been running a weekly series of Instagram events, and Kit and I started up our own podcast and kind of discussion film via Zoom. So it was quite good that it kind of kick-started us into looking into kind of new possibilities and reacting swiftly. And that's been,
right.
In some ways, it's been quite fun. I wouldn't say the situation is fun, but it's nice to know that we can adapt. Because we're small, we can adapt to changing circumstances.
And it gets you out of the pub.
Well, I'd quite happily be back in the pub right now. It's been a long time.
Wait, where did Kit go?
Oh,
Kit
man.
was just Kit is wandering around. He was just looking at the stack of books over there, examining it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I changed the books here. So, guys, it was wonderful to
Thank
have you
you.
here, Shiromi Pinto, Annabel Banks, Kit Caless, and Gary Budden. And we're somewhat sad, and maybe you guys come back with Sanya Semakula, who is assistant editor at Influx Press. It's so there's nobody else there. This is just you three guys running this operation from an administrative standpoint.
We also have a publicist, Jordan Taylor Jones, who does. He works a couple of days a week for us, promoting, doing all the publicity and marketing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
He's not here because he said, and I quote, "This freaks me out," when he was watching this. So I'm not sure he's ready to join Second Life yet. I think First Life is already too hard for him as it is.
Right. We'll onboard him and we'll trap him in here.
Just to add very quickly to that, it's also so we do the administration, but we do have a small team of like regular freelancers we work with. So we don't design the cover art or do the typesetting or anything like that anymore. So they're all freelance, but we've kind of got a good core group of people we use, which has been built up over the years. So there's more people than us doing the work, but it is mainly us doing the sort of day-to-day stuff, definitely.
And I want to talk directly to Jordan right now. Jordan, if you're watching this, Liv Lay here in the first row on the pillow just said, I was intrigued. I just bought these 2 books that we were talking about. So Jordan, let me tell you, I'm an old dude. These people actually do buy books. Come in here, Jordan. Sell some books. Okay, so we exceeded the top of the hour. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you guys for watching.
Thank you so much for hosting.
Thank you. Yeah, and we didn't talk about literary fiction at all.
I know.
I was going to ask you, Draxtor, what is literary fiction?
I don't know. That's why I invited you guys. I'm not a scholar. Literary fiction is something that cannot be put in the shelves at Barnes and Nobles, where it says sci-fi, fantasy, self-help, or history. Right?
I think you should get us back on soon to talk about this, because I kind of agree with you, but also don't agree with you at all with that statement.
Literary fiction. I prepared this statement. Literary fiction is like love. You know it when you have it. You know it. So it's difficult for you to.
Oh, that's good.
That's good.
But
that's really good, Annabel.
Thing, and it's completely recognizable, and everybody knows it when they see it. But it's qualia. You cannot pin it down. So we all have different ideas about what is necessary to trigger that as in us. So that was I prepared a statement, and then we didn't talk about it, but that's my idea.
That is wonderful. I tried to veer the conversation in the beginning there, but I need to say for the record, Gary, what I just said about putting it neatly into shelf, this is not what I think it should be at all. I think that's a horrendous way that I see when I go out just as a consumer or a reader, how this is being treated when I go to the store and such. And this is what oftentimes people tell me, that they have to go into certain have to put themselves into certain boxes in order to even be on a shelf.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think
that's a terrible state of affairs. I would love to change that, and I have friends who devour anything that is in the sci-fi section, but wouldn't touch Annabel Banks with a 10-foot pole, even if I would give it to them,
and
or
one of the
poetry or anything.
So one of the major influences on this at the moment in genre fiction is Amazon. So there was questions about self-publishing, but also once you understand how Amazon keywords work, you understand that the people who write and self-publish in genre fiction write to the keyword that is offered by Amazon. So if you're writing a certain kind of fiction, say like romance, you would write an alpha male romance because the alpha male was already a keyword, a subgenre that can get you into a smaller niche. So you'll put before more. So really weirdly, the Amazon publishing side for genre fiction is dictating what's being written. So I think that's a kind of another thing. It's like, if you're writing the opposite of that, you very kindly just lumped me in that. I think that's one way of doing literary fiction, where you cannot fit into an Amazon categorization.
Mm-hmm.
Or they won't have it there for you. It's not there.
And actually, I'd agree with Annabel there. Kit and I have spent basically the last 10 weeks weekly sort of in our discussions, film discussions, coming up against this issue always of how, we view the work as art, as literature, and then how we have to view it as publishers as, unfortunately, a sort of a marketable category, which you've mentioned, Draxtor, about where you find it in a bookstore. And I think there's a huge tension between those two things that we're always
precisely. And
always
now
dealing
at
with.
the exactly. And now at the end of the hour, now you guys are opening up exactly about the topic that I wanted to put on the table. And now you're blaming the moderator. It's unbelievable. I will never have you back. I will have the Amazon people back to talk about categories and algorithms. Good day, mate. No. This was awesome. So let me wrap this up, and we can continue until the bottom of the hour with the in-world folks. This was absolutely awesome. Usually I put a reading list out on bookshop.org, but they only deliver in the US. So please today go to influxpress.com and look at their offerings. It's absolutely awesome. There's several different subscription models. Next week, we have a panel on kids literature picture books from Syria, a wonderful author, and also a young adult with Margie Preuss, Nadine Kadan, Carol Roman, and Little Miss History. So that's next week at the new hour of 12 o'clock Pacific time. I'm so sad that we couldn't hear Shiromi's wonderful voice, but we'll stick around in Second Life, and then maybe we can get Shiromi to read a little bit. And so you guys on the front row can get that. Next week, 12 o'clock. See you all next Wednesday, Second Life time, right here at the Second Life Book Club.